Welcome into Sports Moments Betting Podcast, NHL edition with our NHL expert north of the border, Andrew McInnis. Welcome in, buddy. How you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. How are you, Drew?
Doing good, man. We're going to break down these games on the NHL slate for Tuesday and also hit some questions from Twitter and talk about what we're getting close to AllStar break. When's the AllStar break, McInnis?
Yeah, this weekend. So pretty much tomorrow we got 5 games and some games on Wednesday, and then that's all she wrote for a few days in the NHL.
And do you recommend betting on the AllStar Game at all, or any? They do like stuff before then as well, like how fast they can hit it and everything like that, right?
Yeah, actually, I love betting the AllStar Game, especially since they've kind of broken down into divisions instead of conferences. I feel like totals betting for sure. You could actually make a good amount of money betting totals betting. I think that, especially that final game, look towards betting the under. It's always that way too high of a number because it's the All-Star Game. The first games, it's a round robin. It's kind of a bracket tournament there, Drew. I would say in the first games, look to bet the over, and then nearing the last games, the players start taking it a little more seriously, so they play a little more defense, look to bet the under near the tail end of it. But it's a great time. You can get some plus money, some good value on some of these props. It's a lot of fun because there's so many different skills competitions and goalie props, different stuff like that, Drew. It's a lot of fun. If you're a hockey fan, you really enjoy watching that stuff.
Cool, man. Well, let's get after the Tuesday card. We got game number 13-14 here, Winnipeg at Carolina. Looks like Carolina heavy favorites here, minus 170 to minus 180 as we're talking later on Monday. Total of 6 in this one, McInnis.
Yeah, I'll start right here by saying there's no way this number should be minus 170 here for the Carolina Hurricanes. There's far too much talent here for Winnipeg for it to be that generous of a number for the Carolina Hurricanes. However, this is a team that at least is kind of beating some better teams, but Winnipeg, they're just a very on and off, inconsistent team. That's been kind of their name of their game here this year. But the biggest thing to mention for this team has been their injuries. All season long so far, it's been either a star defense player, an important guy in the forward position, either a top player or a second-line player in and out of the lineup. We've got Adam Lowry still injured. Nathan Beaulieu on the defense is out. It's if you're missing guys that are important, Brian Little, another guy, has a concussion for his Winnipeg Jets team. If you're missing these key guys at all different positions, it starts to hurt your team. And, both defensively and offensively. I wanted to mention the over in this game because although Carolina is tending to get teams to go under the total with them, and, that's a Carolina style. For a long time right now, this is a team that likes to play defensively. They're very hard checking. But Winnipeg seems to be dragging every team, Drew, into an over type of hockey game and a higher scoring game. They've seen quite a few games that they've played in recently where they've seen 6.5s as their total. Today it's just a 6 listed here as we record this podcast. And, I think right before that All-Star break, and before they kind of get their rest with their family and sit back for a few days, both teams are going to be fired up with this one, and the shot count's going to be very, very heavy. And like I said, Winnipeg has been bringing a lot of teams into high-scoring games. Chicago scored 5 on them. Tampa scored 7 against them. Boston scored 5. The list goes on. People are scoring against Winnipeg. So I'll look over 6 here as my lean. I don't recommend a play on the side here. Carolina, minus 170, not what I'd like to do here. I would actually look at an underdog price here. If you're going to look at bet a dog, this is a good price. We're talking about a value perspective. No way I'm risking that much to bet on Carolina on the money line.
McInnis, next game up, we got game number 15-16, New York Islanders versus the New York Rangers in the battle for New York. We got a total of 6 and a competitively priced game here, man, seeing about minus 110 on each side.
Yeah, always interesting. This is in every sport, really, we get the 2 New York teams. There's always an interesting matchup between the 2 of them. And no matter really where they are in the standings, it seems it's always a competitive game. Right now, this Islanders team, though, 1-5 in their last 6 games, they started to fall off a little bit. And I think I believe the reason why is because they've really lost their scoring touch, but not just that. Their defense has gone out the window, and that's kind of was their bread and butter, Drew. The bulk of last season and the season before that, giving up 6 goals against Washington, 6 goals against the Rangers in two meetings ago. This is a team that's dropped 2 straight games to the New York Rangers. I mean, and look at the standings wise. Look at how they've been playing over the past even like year or two. If I would have told you that over the past 2 times these teams have played, the Rangers have kind of gotten the best of the Islanders, it would surprise me to hear anyone say that. So looking at this spot here, you'd think the Islanders will come ready to play and come ready to get going here, and snap this 3-game losing streak they have right now, because they have not been playing good hockey. The Rangers are still a team that are very messy. They allow a lot of goals. They're disorganized quite a bit, and they don't really show consistency goaltending-wise. However, one interesting thing to mention about this team is that right now they're kind of running 3 goaltenders, something that you don't really ever hear about in the National Hockey League. We've heard about it from a few different teams this year, actually, where they have one guy up from the AHL and 2 of their starting goaltenders, and they're kind of mixing in that third stringer and seeing how he fits in. And usually when we see that happening, that means that one guy is going to get traded away. And for me, I think it's Alexander Georgiev, because there's no way they're going to trade away Henrik Lundqvist with that contract he has, his history with New York. So, it causes a little bit of concern, because you think that this New York team's kind of getting their act together, but juggling that many goalies around so much can definitely make it confusing for teams and difficult to kind of have one goalie settle in. If you're only playing one game every 3-4 times, then it's kind of hard to settle in and get a rhythm. So I really think the Islanders get this one, and they've dropped 2 straight games to them. One of them was in pretty embarrassing fashion. Like you said at the top, the Battle of New York here. I'll go with the Islanders here, -115.
Yeah, that situation with the 3 goaltenders, that would almost make me look to fade that team, because they couldn't get any consistency out of the spot.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I'm doing right here. I mean, I think that eventually it'll start to wear on them. For the time being, it's been working, but like I said, I don't think it will be consistent with them. You want to have one guy that's in there more often than not. Like, that's the net is his. If I was a goaltender, I would be kind of pissed off if I found out that I had a win or I'm playing all right. The next time I realize that next game comes up, I'm not playing. Game after that, it's somebody new. You want to have some consistency in nets. And Drew, let's just say it right now. I mean, 6-2 was the last time. I mean, these 2 teams played, or 3-2 for the Rangers, and the time before that was 6-2 for the Islanders. So I think that in that close game that the Rangers played against the Islanders last time they played is going to be kind of something that they're going to remember and kind of want to have some rapid revenge, I guess some people might say.
Well said there, McInnis. We got game number 17-18, my Golden Knights here, Vegas Golden Knights. Total is 6 at Boston. Looks like the Bruins -140 favorites at home, McInnis.
Yeah, I feel like there's always a Vegas Knights game that we're talking about each week. You and I are doing this, Drew, but something that has to be mentioned, I'm sure news that you've heard about, I'm sure it's a talk of the town, Gerard Gallant, the firing of the head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, that's just despicable. It's hard to fathom as a hockey follower and someone that follows the game on a day in, day out basis. However, one thing you have to look at, and I think hockey fans have to remember, and I'm kind of being the devil's advocate here, Drew, when I say this, is that it's very easy to lose a locker room in the NHL. And whether or not you like your coach doesn't mean you like them or not. It just means that their tactics and their strategies are kind of going out the window. And you see that more often in hockey than any other sport. And the biggest reason that I feel that's the case is because it's not like in the NBA where you're managing a top, a big 3 or 5 or 6 players that you have to really worry about. In the NHL, you're managing, 15 to 20 players, right? And, it doesn't matter if it's your top guy or your guy in your 4th line. If you're not connecting with one, you're probably not connecting with the other guy as well. And so I really do feel like, after a few rough games, some defensive collapses, they said, hey, we got to mix it up. But, the decision to hire, the coach that they really shouldn't have hired, Pete DeBoer, I mean, that's something that shouldn't have happened. This is a guy that coached the San Jose Sharks, Drew, and that's the team that, that took them out. I mean, this just can't happen. I mean, this is just, it's kind of like, hiring your arch nemesis. I mean, you can't hire the coach that was kind of your rival. I don't really understand the move. I also don't really understand the fact that they didn't wait much time to do it. It's almost like it was planned. That stuff bothers me. That's not really pure class. We saw the exact same thing happen to Gerard Gallant when he was in Florida. As far as I'm concerned, Drew, what I've heard, I mean, I know we're close to the Vegas team. I thought Gerard Gallant was a great guy. So I'm not really sure how that ended up happening to him that way. You got to go out there and at least peacefully fire someone. Don't hire the coach that he was beefing with last year, the day after you fire him. But I mean, anyway, that's just me talking and giving out my opinion. But look, as far as this game goes, the Vegas Golden Knights are still struggling, and I thought that they would get their act together. The way I've been handicapping coaches firing, and it's been working for a little while now, where I would look at the game after, bet the total over, and that was the game against Ottawa. I got the push. Their next game was against Montreal, and I figured, okay, you had one game under your belt with a new coach. Next game, you have to get the win in a strong fashion and pressure coach. They ended up blowing a lead, or they ended up falling to the Montreal Canadiens 5-4. They were down 4-2, came back, made it 4-4, ended up losing in the shootout. So a good effort, but still, I mean, to lose to a Montreal Canadiens team, who I hate to say it as a Montreal fan, is definitely not someone the Vegas Golden Knights should be having any trouble with. It's worrisome. The only good news is that I see out of this is that, this is a team that is on the tail end of the road trip. They should be settled in now. There's no road factor. They know the All-Star break's coming up. This is a team with quite a few vets on the team. They should be able to have a competitive game here. And I'm going to look towards the over 6 because the Boston Bruins, who, as I was thinking, was quite a bit of an under team for a very long time, and I'm sure, after the All-Star break and the closer and closer we get to the playoffs, they will be an under team again. This is a Boston team giving up quite a few goals, and they're starting to score again. Their top guys are finding the back of the net. Their secondary scoring's finally there. They had a home against against the Pittsburgh Penguins. They scored 4 goals in both those games. They scored 5 goals in their meeting against Philadelphia a couple games before that. 5 goals against Winnipeg. This is a Boston team that's finding the back of the net, but they're also getting scored on as well. And Vegas is desperate right now. They're starting to get some wins, but they're also letting some goals in. We'll go over 6 here, Drew. This is the play here until the Vegas Golden Knights can crack down defensively.
Yeah, and that coach getting fired, that was a big talk around the town. A lot of people not really liking it from the vibe I'm getting from the Vegas Golden Knights fans, but is what it is. And we got game number 19, game number 20 up next, Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia. Looks like the Penguins minus 130 to minus 140 point favorites in this one on the road. Total of 6, Pitt versus Philadelphia.
Yeah, this is a rivalry. I mean, everybody knows that the bad blood this Penguins team has with the Flyers. This is one of those old-time hockey games where no matter how close these teams are in the standings, it's very typical, very similar to the whole New York Islanders and New York Rangers thing. It's always a good game between these two teams. But I got to look towards this Pittsburgh Penguins team right now. This is a team that's rolling. They've gotten their act together. Drew, nobody else in this league, no other team has faced as much adversity as this Pittsburgh Penguins team and had so much success. I've never seen it before. They've had so many different injuries all throughout their lineup. They had their captain, Sidney Crosby, out for a few months. They had so many of their scorers. Now they have Jake Gensel, who was out for the season with a shoulder injury. They've had defensive issues all year long, and they've still been able to battle through it. And Drew, I'll sit here and tell you, I was guilty of fading them time and time again, and I'm done. I'm done with it. I mean, this is a team to be taken seriously. They're going to make a run at the playoffs, and they've just shown that hockey is the most important thing with hockey is having depth. Not just one guy, not 2 guys to score for you, countless guys to score for you. And they are, more importantly, playing better not just at home, but on the road. 6-1, Drew, their last 7 games on the road, and 6-1 their last 7 when playing on the road against Philadelphia. Philly's good, but they're giving up too many goals. They're too sloppy. Right now, I like Pittsburgh's goaltending way better than Philadelphia's. We have a Pittsburgh money line here, minus 130, and I would bet that sooner than later.
And last game on the board here, McInnis, we got 21-22 Florida, the Panthers at the Chicago Blackhawks. Not seeing a line here, man. Do you want to hit this?
Yeah, I'll just say over. That's all I'm going to say here, Drew. I mean, these are two teams that really struggle defensively. We're going to see some goals here in this game. Florida's playing tonight. The Chicago Blackhawks have kind of found their scoring touch again. Their top guys, Patrick Kane just scored his 1,000th career point with the Chicago Blackhawks. this is, I'm very repetitive when I talk about some of these higher scoring teams, but it's very true. In order to be a successful hockey team, you can't just score goals. I mean, we saw it with the Maple Leafs over the past week. I mean, they're playing in games, Drew, where they're scoring 4 or 5 goals and they're still losing. The Florida Panthers, your hometown team there, Drew, they beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 8-4. When do you hear about a score like that in the National Hockey League? Not too often. And these two teams are very similar to the Leafs as far as they have the offensive talent, but they do not have the ability to shut teams down on defense. And I've actually been getting quite a bit into these first period over wagers as well, Drew. I've been tracking some of these trends. I know VSiN, some of those guys on there are really, really good with the first period. It's kind of a trend that they got into last year. And I've been following it on different networks. And, you can find some good trends. 8 of the last 9, I believe, for the Chicago Blackhawks right now have gone over the total in the first period. So I'll probably have a wager on the first period over in this game as well. I know no real play on the side. I have to base it off of what I see tonight out of Florida, which is why I'm not giving out a side play on this game, Drew.
All right, McInnis. Well, let's hit some questions here. We got Matty C, the Matty C1 on Twitter saying, thoughts on fading the public. Does it factor in the NHL, McInnis?
Yeah, I was having a conversation about this with someone just a few days ago, and I would say that the NHL might be the least sport you want to look at it with. I mean, you've heard a lot of different guys. I think I heard Teddy Covers say it a few weeks ago on one of his podcasts with you. I mean, if you want to make money in the NFL, go ahead, open up any type of service, any type of website, and check what the public's on, and you could actually make money going on the opposite side sometimes, especially, some of these teams the public loves to hammer. But in the NHL, it's not a point spread sport, right? It's just a money line sport. And I think that's the biggest difference. You can't really make money fading the public as much. However, you can look at really where the action is going and try and predict what type of odds you're going to get in the future. For example, over the past 2 weeks, you and I have done this show. I've noticed at least 2 or 3 of our games go up at least 20, 25 cents. Mm-hmm. So trying to predict whether or not you should wait on a number or get on it now is something that's really important. So try and predict kind of where the public or sharp money is going to go is important in the hockey.
Okay. Well said there, McInnis, answering that question. We got Zach Weber. Hi, Andrew. I've become a big fan of NHL props for player assists over 0.5, finding some great value spots. Any takes on NHL player props?
I mean, I don't, Drew, I'll be quite honest with you, I don't do them too often. I've been getting more into doing player goal scorers. I'm handicapping a few different sports right now, and I'm diving into hockey, doing these shows. I don't really have time to look at the assists and shots and that kind of thing. If hockey's the main thing you're handicapping, go ahead and dive into it, because you can, like I said, that's the one thing where trends actually come into a factor, come into account. I mean, I've been betting some of these goal scoring props right now, Drew, and you can get some, plus 200, plus 300 prices on some players that are starting to heat up. And perfect example is, some players on Toronto. You got the top guys, and you got some lower, like second, third line guys that are not really going to be favored to score, or even in the plus 100 ranges, and you can grab them plus 200, plus 300. So I bet those. I think they're profitable, but what I want to tell everybody out there about these props, Drew, and I think you can definitely second this as well, is manage your bankroll properly when you're doing this stuff. Because if you're out there betting, 5 or 6 goal scoring props a night, a couple assists, a couple shots, and you have a rough night, and you're betting a unit on each pick, I mean, it could go tough. So I mean, I would say quarter unit maybe on each of those, and definitely stick to one team or a couple different teams. I wouldn't scatter everything all over the board.
Okay, and kind of tailing off of what you were just saying there, McInnis, we got Drew Thrasher saying, what's the deal with these lines, ? Every time it gets around minus 300, minus 360, and the dogs show up. Any comments there?
I mean, that's just a typical example of a team falling asleep and not being prepared against pretty much a poor team. We got a perfect example here. A game, again, we're recording this podcast on a Monday evening. Today, in Martin Luther King Day, we had the Colorado Avalanche taking on the Detroit Red Wings, Drew. And Detroit went ahead and scored 1-0. They opened the scoring up. They got on the board first. Colorado ended up taking that game. sometimes against the lower skilled teams, it takes these higher skilled teams a couple minutes or maybe a period or two to wake up and get their act together. So sometimes there's certain flat spots as well. And to answer this guy's question, if I was you and I'm looking to bet on some of these underdogs, wait to see if you see a team that's played really well against a few solid teams, and then all of a sudden they have a random game against a really, really bad team. It honestly might be a good spot to bet against that solid team and take the plus value, because that team might be just looking at it too lightly, coming into it as a flat spot. Some teams show up against better teams than bad teams. And I know it sounds really kind of anticlimactic, but it's very true. It's a very big mental game. And you might show up against a better team than you will almost against the worst team sometimes.
All right, man. You're hitting 70% in the NHL the last 5 days. Also pretty good in college and the NBA, and up 32% ROI, return on investment, hitting 61%, 30 and 19 his last 7 days. He's Andrew McInnis. We got specials for the week for just $59. You can get all of his plays in every sport for just $59 for the week. Also a coupon code here, Andrew345, for the rest of his NHL season for $345. Huge discount there at sportsmemo.com. That coupon code is Andrew345 at checkout. McInnis, anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down, man?
No, I just wanted to remind everybody else what we were talking about out the gate with those NHL AllStar Game. Mm-hmm. Bet the over in that first game. The first game for these teams, there's rounds in this, Drew. And that championship game, bet the under, because it's going to be very high priced. And teams, no matter what it is, these athletes they're competitors. They want to win, Drew. So they're going to probably show up and try a little bit more for the last game. So, it's one of those things. I think that people are going to want to bet the over in every one of these games and think that it's going to be a big joke. Once it gets down to the final game, they're going to care a little more and probably try a little bit harder.
And I know everybody out there listening is probably a sharper NHL handicapper than I am, unfortunately. But I do like to tell you, whenever you give out a good best bet, and hockey is such a great sport to actually watch live, man. What do you mean by that to any casual fans out there that are watching when you say like tournament games?
Yeah, so it's pretty much, it used to be just the Western Conference versus the Eastern Conference, Drew. But now there's so many different divisions. So the Metropolitan Division, the Pacific Division, the Atlantic Division, so on and so forth. So it's broken into little mini teams. So now instead of it just being two teams, the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference, it's all the NHL divisions competing in little mini tournaments. So that's kind of what it is now, and it makes it a lot more interesting because it's way more broken up, and that way you can kind of handicap it better. I find it way easier to handicap the All-Star Game. I didn't used to take it too seriously when it was just East versus West, but now you've got Atlantic, Metropolitan, Central, and the Pacific. So it becomes two teams, now turns into four. So they're going to play each other and then get a couple games early in. But like I said, this tournament style, the later it gets, and you can still bet these like in-game or prior to the finals or whatever. For all of you guys out there, most people that are betting online have in-game capability. Look to bet that under in the finals, and I look forward to talking about this with you on Monday, Drew, and I hope you do it as well.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. I like that they're going to be playing a little round robin here tournament. Atlantic, Metropolitan, you're right, man. What about like something that I've noticed in MLB, the All-Star Game, is these guys are on a team with everybody in their division. I'm guessing they play each other more so than the other team. Is there any issues with these guys not liking each other?
I feel like you almost perfectly segued that into this because I have just the answer for that, and I'm really happy you asked that. So, pretty much, there's a top line for the Edmonton Oilers. It's Zach Kassian, Connor McDavid, and Leon Draisaitl, and two of those guys really belong on a top line. One of them doesn't. That guy is Zach Kassian. He's a real big, tough guy, Drew, and he's kind of found his way on the top line with McDavid, supposedly the best player in the world, and Draisaitl as well. They're kind of like yin and yang, those two guys. And then Kassian's kind of out there to protect them, so to speak. He's on the top line to be that physical presence with them. Anyway, so There's a player on the Calgary Flames. His name is Matthew Tkachuk. Famous last name, Keith Tkachuk. A lot of hockey fans would know that last name. And anyway, so he's a borderline dirty player, I guess you could say, Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, he plays on the edge, I guess you might say. And so he's kind of as part of that new generation hockey, whereas Kassian's a part of that old generation hockey. Anyway, there was a game where those two teams played, Battle of Alberta, Calgary and Edmonton, and pretty much Tkachuk took not one, not two, but 3 runs on Kassian from behind the net. He absolutely smashed him. I think he hit his head at one point. It was just blindside hits. He was going almost out of his way, Drew, to hit Kassian. It wasn't like it was part of the play. He was realizing when he could pick his spots. And then Kassian pretty much looked up after one of the hits, saw it was him, and jumped him. Absolutely jumped him and pulled him to the ice, started beating him down. Anyway, the reason why I'm saying this is because in an interview, Leon Draisaitl was asked, hey, if you end up on a line with Matthew Tkachuk in the AllStar Game, what are you going to do? Like, if you're playing with him? And he goes, well, I'm just going to skate off the ice. He goes, I'll just, I'm not going to play with him. And that's the funny thing. I always found that funny as a kid growing up, too, is that, like, you see these guys that are, checking each other, fighting each other, talking smack to each other. And then during this All-Star Game, they're skating around, chatting, talking about life and families. But I think situations like that I just mentioned, you don't forget about.
No, not at all, man. That's interesting. And I wonder if that could be worked into some sort of betting advantage for the sports bettor. But overall, great stuff, McInnis. And did you want to throw anything out before we shut this down?
No, we're good to go. We're good to go. I have no real best bet. I just wanted to go through those games tomorrow, Drew, if that's all good, and get some of those questions and talk about the All-Star Game a bit. So good to have this weekly podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And we're going to be doing this each and every Monday going forward, late night on Monday. And it will be the Tuesday card, so you can get down on some of the early lines. But, guys, if you're liking the content, please give us a thumbs up, the like button, and feel free to comment below the video or on Twitter at McInnis Picks or at Drew Martin Bets. So, guys, best of luck with your bets, and we will talk tomorrow.